episode of The Broke Engineer. I'm really excited to start the new Batman series where I'll just be making a lot of stupid stuff. But if you may have seen my last video, I had my Batman cape, a Batmobile which my dad won't let me use, and of course what comes next is going to be the grappling hook. Now, on a more serious note, however, unfortunately Tutu Man got away. And to make sure villains like him never get away, I'm going to be making a grappling hook to catch up to people like him. Now, people might ask why I'm making that. Why don't you just exercise more? Well, my mouth time is 10 minutes. I mean, come on, I'm never catching up that far, right? So, to make sure that I won't have to deal with all of this, I'll just be making a grappling hook. So much easier, you know? So yeah, and don't worry, this video isn't going to be 30 minutes long. I'm going to keep it a little bit more short and start with different parts, starting with design. Okay, so in terms of design, I was thinking about different ways of launching the gun, and obviously, we're in America, they're not gonna really let me use gunpowder, so I decided to go with pneumatics. However, in terms of pneumatics, I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm also new to it, so instead of doing research like a normal person would have, I just jumped straight into the design, so let's skip into that. After unnecessarily designing this page, I went ahead and made a design before doing any research, which you shouldn't do, and you can probably see because of how stupid this idea was. But anyways, let's get into it. So essentially the idea was to add 2 pneumatic actuators to punch the grappling hook and shoot it really far. Now, obviously, since I put such little thought into the design, there's going to be a lot of problems. And there are 2 main problems in this case. First, adding 2 pneumatic pistons is going to be really hard to control electronically. And secondly, the amount of impact that you're pushing onto the grappling hook is probably going to break it. So, at this point, I went ahead and did actual research. So, we'll skip ahead to that. So I went through a lot of different types of builds, and the one I think I liked the most was the Hacksmith one. It was a combination of their Apex Legends launcher combined with the grappling hook, and I thought that was just amazing, and it shot it really far. But they never told us how they accomplished that. Actually, one part of it they just put trade secret. So I guess I'm just gonna have to figure out for myself. In this system, we have a compressor at the base of the system, which just takes in air from the outside and compresses it, and sends whatever it has to the air tank. From the air tank, it goes to the pressure gauge, which just measures the pressure, and then goes to the solenoid, which controls when and where to release the compressed air. Now, in this case, there's only one output, so it's really just controlling when to release it. And then the output thing, which is kind of just like a rocket thruster or something to release the air better. And to the side of the pneumatics, or to the side of the gun, there's going to be a pneumatic control module, which controls the solenoid. And then, of course, everything else I kept the same. The rope underneath, the motor spinning with the spindle sticking out, all of that's the same. Now, I should probably have put more research into this before continuing, but I kind of just wanted to go over the things I already knew and went straight into design. So for materials, I chose carbon fiber for the grapple, just because it's lightweight and really strong. And in terms of actually manufacturing it, there's a method called you can use forged carbon fiber, which is essentially just the same process as pouring steel into a mold and letting it cool down to construct the grapple. Now, the rope part, it's a little bit more complicated. So we're going to need steel rope just because it's stronger and in case that it gets pulled back in or stuck on something or caught on something, it doesn't break. And then as the rope is stuck around the axle, we're going to need some level of friction to actually keep it together. We also don't want too much that it causes it to burn out. Now, I chose aluminum here just because it has a high friction coefficient, 0.61, pretty high. So it will stick on, but it'll probably need some testing to see if it'll burn out or cause any damage. But yeah. Now, no matter how good you are, at some point you're going to have to do some amount of research. You can't just impromptu everything, right? So, well, unless you're me. I'm better. But okay. On a more serious note though, I did have to go through a bunch of YouTube videos to learn pneumatics, how they work, how they're assembled, and all of that. But before I get into the design, I just want to say, don't do what I did, or at least watch until the end, because if you do what I did, it's gonna explode. I constructed this. So it's essentially the same thing, but I also looked more into how the parts were arranged, usually, and some safety systems. So the only thing I really added here is the pressure relief valve and the pressure vent. Now, what the pressure relief valve does is make sure that if you're going past a set pressure, say 120 psi, it'll release some of the compressed air out. And the pressure vent is also similar to this, and if you pull it out, it's like a safety system just in case there's too much air compiling. So you can always pull out the pressure vent to release all the air at once. Have a battery, which on the right side is connected to a circuit breaker switch, which can turn on or off the motor. At this point, I also learned that turning the motor, no matter how you do it, won't damage the motor. So as it's being released, you don't need to turn right to release a string with it. It can just release it through pressure by itself. So in this case, we only need the motor to reel it back in. So it just needs an off or on circuit breaker switch. At this point, my hero and savior Coven came in and helped me redesign parts of the grappling hook. And he taught me that what I was doing didn't really need electronics or code, things like a PDH or pneumatic control module, and that I could just do it completely mechanically. So all I have to do is change a couple things around and make it manual. After Coven's help, we made 3 major changes. The first one is making it manual. And how are we going to do that? Well, the main thing that really required code was the solenoid, which needed the PCM. So a simple way to replace that is by using an open or close valve, which you can just manually open or close to release the air. Next is the regulator, which simply controls how much air is being outputted at once, so that we're having stable and consistent results when we're shooting out. And the next major change is moving the circuit breaker right next to the battery so that it can be used as a safety method in case things go wrong and we need to shut it down. And as part of adding a circuit breaker in the back, we're going to be changing the circuit breakers to the motor and the compressor to switches now, since it's just a lot simpler that way. Now, there was a major problem with this design that I hadn't thought of yet, which I'll fix in the future for the next design. But essentially, I added the open or close valve right next to the air tank. And if that's the case, once the valve is closed, there's no air going to the pressure gauge or the vent plug, so there would be no purpose of adding those, right? So I'll be fixing that in the next design. At this point, Coven saved me again. He told me that the regulator has an unintended consequence of slowing down the airflow. Now, in terms of my system, from bottom to top, The regulator was placed at the top, the end of the system. And since it slows down the airflow, the grappling hook is going to be much weaker. So to change this around, it's pretty simple. We're just going to rearrange some things. So if we keep the regulator next to the air tank, then the airflow is going to start off regulated to begin with. And if we keep the open or closed valve at the end of it, it's going to release way more pressure than if you were just to put the regulator at the end. So with this design change made, it's time to finalize this design. With these changes made, I'll just go over the system bottom to top one more time. So we start off with the battery, going to the circuit breaker as an emergency stop. Then it goes to the power splitter, which splits the power to the right, to the switch, which can turn on or off the motor. And then it goes to the left side with another switch to the compressor, which releases all the excess air through the pressure relief valve. Now from the compressor, it goes to the regulator, which outputs a set amount of air every time, to the air tank, into the pressure gauge, into the vent plug, and then finally, with this entire system having free compressed airflow, once you open the open or close valve, it lets go of all of the air and shoots out the grappling hook. If you guys like this video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. In my next video, I'll be going over the catting process of the entire thing. But before I get to that, if I see that this video gets 50 or more likes, I'll be adding a combustion unit in, because who doesn't want to see stuff explode?